Commander Sarah Chen stood at the helm of the EFS Resilient, watching the massive alien vessel approach through the quantum blast viewport. Its bioorganic hull rippled with iridescent patterns, beautiful, delicate, and completely unlike the reinforced titanium alloy plating of her own ship. The stark contrast between their vessels perfectly illustrated humanity's isolation in the galactic community. Incoming transmission from the Lumiri diplomatic vessel, Lieutenant Park announced, his fingers dancing across the haptic interface. There, requesting emergency docking clearance. Sarah's eyes narrowed. The Lumiri were among the most vocal opponents of human integration into the Galactic Assembly, claiming Earth's savage evolution made its people too unpredictable. For them to request docking with a human vessel meant something had gone terribly wrong. Life support readings, she asked, already knowing the answer. Multiple failures across their ship, Commander. Their atmospheric processors are barely functioning. Whatever hit them? Park's voice trailed off as new data scrolled across his screen. Ma'am, I'm detecting unusual biomass signatures throughout their hull. It's growing. Sarah made her decision. Grant them clearance, alert medical to prepare quarantine protocols, and get me a direct link to Earth Command. Something tells me we're about to find out why the most advanced civilization in the sector is asking help from the primitive Deathworlders. The Lumiri ambassador, Silana, stood before them in the quarantine chamber, her translucent skin revealing the rapid pulse of multiple hearts. Even through the reinforced barrier, Sarah could see the ambassador was terrified. The assembly was wrong about you. Silana began, her translator struggling to convey the desperation in her harmonic speech. What we feared, your strength, your resilience, your capacity for violence, they're not flaws. They're exactly what we need now. Holographic displays materialized around them, showing scenes of devastation across multiple star systems. Organic structures, far more advanced than anything humanity had built, being consumed by a writhing mass of biomechanical growth. But what caught Sarah's attention wasn't the destruction. It was how the plague moved. It's adapting, she observed. Each time your defenses change, it evolves to counter them. Yes, Silana confirmed. Our greatest minds believed we could control it. We found it dormant in the ruins of the precursor civilization, thought we could harness its adaptive capabilities. But it broke free. And now, she gestured to the spreading plague. Our weapons are useless. Our ships, our technology, everything we built to create perfect harmony with the universe, it all just becomes fuel for its growth. Sarah studied the data, her mind racing. The Lumiri and their allies had spent millennia developing technology that worked in perfect synchronization with the natural universe. But nature wasn't always harmonious. Sometimes it required friction, conflict, and adaptation. Sometimes it required survivors. Your civilization never had to adapt to hostile conditions, Sarah said, understanding dawning. You modified your worlds to suit your needs, engineered your bodies for comfort. Humanity did the opposite. We were shaped by Earth's challenges, forced to overcome them. Precisely. Silana's skin shifted to a deeper blue. Your ships aren't elegant because they must withstand conditions we never considered. Your weapons are crude because they're designed to work even when everything else fails. Your bodies, she paused. Your bodies can survive radiation, pressure, and trauma that would kill any of our species instantly. A new alert flashed across the displays. Another system had gone dark. The plague was accelerating, learning from each civilization it consumed. Time was running out. Sarah opened a channel to Earth Command. This is Commander Chen. I'm sending you data on an immediate threat to all sentient life. Request permission to execute First Contact Protocol 7. There was a pause before the response came. Protocol 7 confirmed. Commander, you have full authority to act on humanity's behalf. She turned back to Silana. The Assembly isolated us because they thought humanity was too dangerous to join galactic civilization. They were right. We are dangerous. But sometimes the universe needs dangerous people. Through the quarantine barrier, Sarah extended her hand in the ancient human gesture of alliance. Ambassador, let's show the galaxy what humanity's evolutionary crucible forged us to become. Shilana's translator struggled to process her response, but her meaning was clear. Help us survive. The United Earth Defense Center buzzed with activity as holographic displays showed the plague's inexorable advance across the galaxy. Commander Chen watched as Admiral Victor Torres studied the simulation results, his expression grim. What had started as a desperate plea for help had become humanity's greatest challenge, and perhaps its destiny. Run it again, Torres ordered, his voice carrying the weight of decades of military experience. Show me what happens when the plague encounters our older technology. The simulation reset, displaying a confrontation between the biomechanical horror and humanity's obsolete machinery. Unlike the elegant Lemuri vessels that had been consumed almost instantly, Earth's rugged equipment showed unexpected resistance. It's not just about technological advancement, Dr. Maya Patel, Earth's leading xenobiologist, pointed out. Look at the interaction patterns. The plague expects systems to work perfectly. It's never encountered technology designed to fail safely. Sarah nodded, understanding dawning. Because we evolved on a death world, we don't just plan for success. We plan for failure, for disasters, for the worst-case scenario. Exactly. Maya expanded the holographic display, showing the plague's cellular structure. The Lemuri and their allies built their civilization on harmony and perfection. But life on Earth taught us something different. Adaptation requires stress, conflict, and most importantly, redundancy. Admiral Torres straightened, his military bearing more pronounced. Then we give it something it's never experienced before. Controlled chaos. The next few weeks transformed Earth's orbital shipyards into a testament to human ingenuity. While the Lemuri observers watched in confusion, humanity began retrofitting their fleet not with advanced technology, but with deliberately redundant systems. I don't understand, Shilana admitted, watching workers install what looked like primitive mechanical backup systems alongside quantum computers. Your people have access to our advanced technology now. Why rely on these antiquated methods? Sarah led her through the organized chaos of the shipyard. Because your technology is too perfect, she explained. It works brilliantly until it doesn't work at all. Humanity learned a different approach. We build in layers, backups for our backups. When our advanced systems fail, we fall back to simpler ones. They stopped at a viewport overlooking the EF's resilience modifications. The ship now bristled with what looked like a combination of cutting-edge weapons and surprisingly basic mechanical systems. Your civilization never needed to think this way, Sarah continued. You shaped your worlds to be perfect environments. But Earth tried to kill us every chance it got. Earthquakes, hurricanes, predators, disease, we had to adapt to it all. That's why every human ship has manual overrides, mechanical backups, and emergency systems that would seem primitive to your people. Dr. Petal joined them, bringing up new data on her tablet. We've analyzed the plague's behavior pattern. It doesn't just consume technology. It learns from it, expects systems to behave according to optimal efficiency patterns. But human technology is deliberately inefficient, Shilana realized, her skin shifting to a thoughtful purple. Because you had to account for extreme conditions. Precisely, Maya smiled. We're not just fighting with technology. We're fighting with our evolutionary history. Every backup system, every redundancy, every primitive solution we've developed represents a lesson learned through survival. In the distance, a massive ship emerged from Earth's atmosphere. The newly commissioned EFS Prometheus. Unlike the sleek vessels of the Galactic Assembly, it was overbuilt, with layers of redundant systems and backup solutions that would have seemed absurd to most advanced civilizations. The plague adapts to perfection, Sarah said, watching the Prometheus take its place in the growing fleet. So we'll show it something completely different, the beautiful imperfection of human engineering. Admiral Torres's voice came over the comm system. All ships prepare for departure. Operation Evolutionary Response begins in 6 hours. As humanity's fleet assembled, Sarah couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The galaxy had feared humanity's primitive nature, their connection to their evolutionary crucible. Now those same traits might be the key to saving all sentient life. Will it be enough? Shilana asked, her translator struggling to convey her mix of hope and fear. Sarah watched as more ships joined the formation, each one a testament to humanity's unique approach to survival. We're about to find out. The plague thinks it knows how to adapt to any threat. Let's show it what happens when it faces something that evolved on the deadliest known world in the galaxy. The fleet's departure would mark humanity's first major intervention in galactic affairs. But unlike the elegant solutions of the assembly, they would fight with everything their harsh evolution had taught them. The wisdom of redundancy, the strength of imperfection, and the unrelenting will to survive. The Centauri sector blazed with the light of battle as humanity's fleet engaged the biomechanical plague for the first time. Commander Sarah Chen watched from the Resilience Bridge as the initial reports came in. The plague had already consumed 3 colony worlds in this sector, their once pristine cities now twisted into nightmarish sculptures of biological and mechanical fusion. Multiple contact points. Lieutenant Park's voice cut through the tension. The plague is responding to our presence. It's different from the recordings. Sarah studied the tactical display. The writhing mass of biomechanical horror had already adapted to their presence, forming structures that mimicked their ship's configurations. But something was wrong. It's hesitating, she realized. Look at the pattern recognition algorithms. It's trying to predict our ship's behavior, but our redundant systems are confusing it. Dr. Maya Patel's voice came over the comm from her research vessel. The plague operates on perfect efficiency. Every time it encounters our backup systems, it has to waste energy accounting for multiple possible responses. It's never faced technology designed to be deliberately unpredictable. All ships execute Protocol Chaos, Admiral Torres commanded. On cue, the human fleet began switching randomly between their advanced systems and mechanical backups, creating patterns of behavior that defied the plague's adaptive algorithms. The effect was immediate. Where the plague had easily overwhelmed the assembly's perfectly coordinated fleets, it now struggled to predict and counter the human ships' seemingly erratic actions. But their advantage wouldn't last long. New biomechanical signatures detected, Park reported, his voice tense. The plague is evolving. It's incorporating our redundancy patterns into its structure. Sarah watched as the horror before them began to change, developing its own layers of backup systems. This is what we expected, she reminded her crew. Remember your training. Adaptation goes both ways. The battle intensified as humanity's fleet engaged in what looked like technological regression. Ships deliberately shut down their advanced systems, falling back to mechanical controls and chemical rockets when the plague tried to interface with their quantum drives. Every time the enemy adapted to one approach, the humans switched to another. But the cost was mounting. The plague's rapid evolution meant every victory was temporary, every advantage quickly neutralized. The Resilient shuddered as biomechanical tendrils tried to breach their hull, only to be repelled by deliberately incompatible materials. Commander, Maya's voice carried an edge of excitement despite the chaos. The plague's adaptation rate is causing molecular instability. Every time it tries to copy our redundant systems, it has to maintain more complexity than its structure can handle. Sarah understood immediately. It's not just adapting anymore. It's being forced to evolve too quickly. Admiral, requesting permission to execute Contingency Darwin. There was a pause before Torres responded. Granted, all ships, prepare for Contingency Darwin. May God have mercy on us all. The human fleet began its most dangerous maneuver yet, deliberately allowing the plague to partially infect their outer hull systems. Every ship became a miniature evolutionary pressure cooker, forcing the plague to adapt to dozens of different technological configurations simultaneously. "Hull breach on Deck 7. Park shouted as alarms blared. "The plague is in our systems. Hold position," Sarah ordered, her knuckles white as she gripped her command chair. "Let it try to understand us." Throughout the fleet, the plague encountered something it had never faced before: technology that didn't try to achieve perfection, but rather embraced controlled failure. Systems that were designed to break in specific ways, creating evolutionary dead ends that trapped the constantly adapting horror. "Energy signatures are becoming unstable," Maya reported. "The plague can't maintain cohesion while trying to adapt to so many incompatible systems simultaneously. Wait." Her voice trailed off as new data flooded her screens. "Sarah, it's not just adapting anymore. It's starting to break down at a molecular level." The tactical display showed the truth of her words. Where the plague touched human ships, it began to fragment, its perfectly efficient structures collapsing under the weight of too many simultaneous adaptations. The horror had finally encountered something it couldn't simply consume and improve upon: the beautiful chaos of human engineering. But victory came at a terrible price. A dozen human ships were lost, consumed by the plague before it began to break down. The survivors bore scars that would never fully heal, their hulls forever marked by their encounter with the horror. "All ships, report status." Torres commanded as the plague's fragments dispersed into space, temporarily beaten but not destroyed. Sarah looked at her own ship's damage reports and knew they had learned something crucial. The plague could be fought not through perfection, but through controlled imperfection. Each failure, each seeming weakness, had become a weapon. "Send word to Earth," she ordered. "Tell them we found its weakness. The plague adapts to perfection, so we'll give it so much imperfection that it tears itself apart trying to understand us." As the fleet regrouped, Sarah knew they had only won the first round. The plague would return, stronger and more adaptive than before. But humanity had proven something important. Sometimes the best way to fight evolution was with evolution itself. They had survived their first major engagement not through superior technology, but through their species' most fundamental trait: the ability to turn apparent weaknesses into strengths. The orbital training facility above Mars buzzed with activity as alien species from across the galaxy learned to embrace their long-forgotten survival instincts. Commander Sarah Chen watched from the observation deck as Ambassador Xilana struggled through exercises designed to push physical and psychological limits. Again, Sarah called out as Xilana faltered under the slightly increased gravity. "Your ancestors evolved on a world nearly as harsh as Earth. That strength is still in your genetic memory." Xilana's translucent skin flickered with exhaustion, but she pushed herself up again. Around her, other Lemuri were going through similar training, their normally graceful movements becoming something more primal, more resilient. "The assembly spent millennia trying to transcend our evolutionary origins," Xilana managed between breaths. "We thought we were advancing beyond our crude beginnings." Dr. Maya Patil adjusted the gravity controls slightly. "Evolution isn't just about advancement. It's about adaptation, about maintaining capabilities even when they're not immediately needed. Your people still carried the genetic potential for survival in harsh conditions." The facility had been transformed into what the aliens called evolution's crucible. Each section recreated different planetary conditions, challenging species to rediscover their buried strengths. The Centaurians, who had engineered themselves for perfect efficiency, were learning to embrace redundancy. The Vega Collective, who had abandoned physical forms for near-digital existence, were relearning the value of biological adaptation. Admiral Torres entered the observation deck, his uniform bearing new scars from recent encounters with the plague. "We've received reports from the Orion sector. The plague has evolved again, but it's showing signs of strain. Our strategy of forcing multiple rapid adaptations is working, but we need more than just human ships," Sarah finished. "We need a true coalition of species fighting in their own unique ways." In the training area below, a group of Arcturus warriors were working with human combat instructors. Their civilization had spent generations becoming diplomats and scholars, but their bodies still carried the strength of their warrior ancestors. Now they were relearning how to channel that power. "Look there," Maya pointed to a monitor showing cellular activity. "Their bodies remember. Every species here evolved to survive something. We're just helping them remember how." The next few weeks brought remarkable transformations. The Lumiri discovered they could temporarily alter their transparent skin into armor, an ability their ancestors had used to survive predators. The Centaurians found they could operate with multiple redundant systems, much like Earth's life forms. Each species began rediscovering traits their civilizations had dismissed as primitive. "It's not about regressing," Sarah explained during a coalition briefing. "It's about remembering that imperfection and adaptation are not our weaknesses. They're our greatest strengths. The plague expects perfect efficiency, predictable patterns. We'll show it the true power of evolutionary diversity." The breakthrough came during a joint training exercise. A Lumiri ship, modified with both their advanced technology and deliberately redundant systems, successfully repelled a plague attack without human assistance. The crew had embraced their species' forgotten survival traits while maintaining their technological advancement. "We're ready," Silana declared, standing taller despite the increased gravity. Her skin now shifted colors not just with emotion, but as a form of natural defense. The assembly believed that transcending our origins meant abandoning them. We were wrong. Admiral Torres reviewed the combat footage with approval. "Each species brings something unique to this fight. The plague adapts to patterns, to consistency. We'll give it chaos. Not just human chaos, but the combined evolutionary heritage of a dozen worlds." The Coalition fleet assembled in high orbit, a striking contrast to the uniform perfection of the old assembly forces. Each ship now reflected its species' rediscovered strength, while incorporating lessons learned from humanity's primitive approach to survival. "The plague thinks it understands adaptation," Sarah addressed the combined fleet. "It's encountered countless civilizations, consumed countless technologies, but it's never faced species fighting with both their advanced technology and their evolutionary heritage." Maya's latest analysis appeared on the strategic display. "The plague's primary weakness is its drive for perfect adaptation. By combining multiple species approaches to survival, we create scenarios too complex for it to adapt to efficiently." The fleet's first joint operation would target a critical sector where the plague had established a stronghold. Each species would fight in its own way while supporting the others, creating a battle strategy as diverse as evolution itself. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore," Sarah realized as she watched the coalition ships move into formation. "We're fighting for the right to remain beautifully imperfect." The assembled crews, human, Lumiri, Centaurian, and others, had found something profound in their training. They had rediscovered that their greatest strengths lay not in transcending their origins, but in embracing them. Together, they represented billions of years of evolutionary problem-solving, each species contributing its unique approach to survival. As the fleet prepared to jump, Sarah felt a deep sense of pride. Humanity had done more than just share their technology or tactics. They had helped the galaxy remember that true strength comes from accepting and embracing all aspects of oneself, even those parts long dismissed as primitive or unnecessary. The plague had never encountered such a force, not because of advanced technology or perfect coordination, but because it would face the combined evolutionary heritage of the galaxy itself. Every species now fought with both their advanced civilization and their ancient survival instincts, creating a complexity that no single pattern of adaptation could overcome. The Nexus system blazed with the light of 1,000 suns as the Coalition fleet engaged the plague's main concentration. The biomechanical horror had consumed nearly a quarter of the galaxy, but here, at the site of its original discovery, humanity and their allies would make their final stand. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Resilient, watching as ships from a dozen species moved in perfect imperfection, each following their own evolutionary tactics while supporting the whole. The plague had gathered its strength here, creating structures that dwarfed star systems. Multiple contact points, Lieutenant Park reported, his voice steady after countless battles. The plague is different. It's combining every adaptation it's encountered. On the tactical display, the horror writhed with impossible complexity. It had learned from every engagement, every species it had fought. But in doing so, it had taken on a fatal burden: the need to maintain too many adaptations simultaneously. All ships, execute Operation Genesis, Admiral Torres commanded. Remember your training. Fight as your ancestors did. The Coalition fleet split into species-based battle groups, each employing tactics drawn from their evolutionary heritage. The Lumiri ships phased between states of matter, using their rediscovered ability to adapt to extreme environments. Centaurian vessels operated with controlled chaos, their systems deliberately cycling between efficiency and redundancy. Energy readings are off the scale, Dr. Maya Patel reported from her research vessel. The plague is trying to adapt to every strategy simultaneously, just as we predicted. The human ships led the charge, their primitive technology creating patterns that defy prediction. Each vessel was a testament to Earth's harsh evolution, overbuilt, redundant, and designed to survive even when systems failed. Contact in 3, Sarah announced. Remember, we're not just fighting with technology. We're fighting with 4 billion years of evolutionary problem-solving. The battle that followed would be remembered for generations. The plague lashed out with tendrils of biomechanical horror, each adapted to counter specific species. But the Coalition had learned to be unpredictable. When the plague adapted to energy weapons, they switched to kinetic. When it countered physical attacks, they used biological countermeasures developed from their own evolutionary defenses. Hull breach on Deck 4, Park called out as the Resilient took a direct hit. But instead of failing, the ship's systems adapted, rerouting through backup after backup, each one slightly different, each one forcing the plague to waste energy adapting. Look at the molecular structure. Maya's voice carried triumph despite the chaos. The plague can't maintain coherence. It's trying to be everything at once, and it's tearing itself apart. The tactical display told the story. The plague's drive for perfect adaptation had become its undoing. Every time it encountered a new strategy, it tried to incorporate it, but the combined evolutionary heritage of a dozen species created patterns too complex for any single entity to maintain. All ships, press the advantage, Torres ordered. Show it everything you've got. The Coalition fleet unleashed a symphony of survival strategies. Arcturus warriors channeled their ancient berserker strength through quantum weapons. Vega collective ships shifted between digital and biological states faster than the plague could analyze. Each species contributed their unique approach to survival, creating a chaos too beautiful for the plague's perfect efficiency to comprehend. The Resilient shuddered as another tendril struck, but Sarah smiled. Their ship's systems were deliberately unbalanced, creating patterns that evolved as unpredictably as life itself. The plague tried to adapt, tried to understand, but each attempt only hastened its collapse. Energy cascade detected, Maya reported with growing excitement. The plague's molecular structure is destabilizing across all contact points. It's breaking down. The tactical display erupted with light as the plague's massive forms began to disintegrate. Its drive for perfect adaptation had finally encountered something it couldn't consume: the combined evolutionary heritage of all intelligent life. Each species' unique approach to survival had created a complexity that defied the very concept of perfect adaptation. All ships, fall back to safe distance, Torres commanded. Let it end. They watched in awe as the horror that had threatened galactic civilization collapsed under its own weight. In trying to adapt to every species' evolutionary strategy simultaneously, it had violated the fundamental law of nature. That true survival requires specialization, requires choice, requires the acceptance of imperfection. As the light faded, Sarah turned to Xilana, who had insisted on being present for the final battle. The ambassador's skin rippled with colors that her ancestors had used to celebrate victory. "We forgot something important," Xilana said softly, watching the plague's remnants dissolve into harmless particles. "Evolution isn't about achieving perfection. It's about finding a way to survive, whatever that takes." The assembly thought they could transcend their origins, Sarah agreed. But they forgot that those origins, all those seemingly primitive adaptations, were what made them strong in the first place. The coalition fleet regrouped, each ship bearing scars that would never fully heal, but they had proven something profound. The galaxy's greatest strength lay not in achieving perfect harmony, but in embracing the beautiful chaos of evolution itself. "Send word to Earth," Sarah ordered. "Tell them the plague is destroyed. And tell the assembly." She smiled, looking at the diverse fleet around them. "Tell them the Deathworlders send their regards." As the coalition ships set course for home, Sarah reflected on how far they'd come. Humanity had been feared for their connection to their evolutionary past, their inability to achieve the assembly's idea of perfection. But in the end, it was precisely those primitive traits, shared by all species but long forgotten, that had saved galactic civilization. The galaxy would never be the same. The assembly's dream of perfect harmony had been replaced by something far more powerful, the understanding that true strength comes not from transcending one's origins, but from embracing them. Every species carried within them the wisdom of countless generations of survival, a heritage too precious to abandon.